This question says similar balls are thrown to containers A and B. The ball sinks in container A, and here we can see that, and floats in container B. Which container is filled with denser liquid? Is it A, B, or if the information is insufficient, then mark C. So again, we can see that in A, the ball is sinking. It doesn't sink all the way to the bottom, but it is indeed sinking. In B, we see that the ball is floating. And whether or not an object sinks or floats in a liquid depends on the relative densities. And the density is the mass per unit volume. So for example, the density of water is often expressed in grams per milliliter. So we have the mass, again in grams, per milliliter. So if an object is denser than the liquid, it will sink. And if it's less dense, it'll float. So let's apply that to these two containers. In A, we have the ball, which is sinking, which means that the ball must be denser than the liquid. In B, the ball is floating, which means that the ball must be less dense than the liquid. And therefore, the correct answer is B. Now, to explain this a little bit further, we can talk about the concept of buoyancy. So when an object is immersed in a liquid, there will be a pressure difference between the two different sides. And that difference comes as a result of the gravitational acceleration, the density of the liquid, and the density of the object. But this downward force, the weight of the object, will be resisted by a buoyant force in the opposite direction. And again, depending on those aforementioned parameters, the buoyant force will be different depending on the relative densities. But in general, you can remember that an object that is denser than the liquid it's floating in will sink. And if an object is less dense, then it will float.